Blizzard has been trying to add the Goblin capital since forever, since Classic, since Cataclysm, even in BFA there was an attempt. Now, this came a bit unexpectedly as Blizzard came with a new list of short stories for the new expansion called The Voices Within, alongside your obvious, main characters Thrall, Anduin, Alleria. They are giving a huge spotlight to Gazlowe, the Goblin leader, that is apparently going to a struggling Goblin city to bring it back to life. Now, Undermine is a massive Goblin capital below Kezan, still active today. Kezan, that is literally just a little bit north of Khaz'Algar, the new expansion zone that contained a ton of azerite, aka World Soul blood, and guess what Khaz'Algar is all about? The World Soul. Is this going to be 11.1 content, and what will the first ever Goblin capital look like? If you guys want to buy Total War, Elder Scrolls, or any other game, you can get them at great prices with my Gamivo link. You can also get anything Warcraft related, gift cards and software, and all below market prices. Best of all, if you add my code DORON, you can get an even bigger discount, so make sure to check out my link in the description and get some amazing deals with Gamivo. So, I'm not sure how many people are actually aware of this, but Blizzard originally planned to not only make Goblins playable in Classic, but they even went as far as having concepted the entire continent of Kezan in the original Classic beta, and it was a really close call to having Goblins and Undermine right off the bat in the actual game. This is one of the reasons the Goblins are actually so developed, with multiple outposts all throughout Azeroth, all this lore, the unique Goblin animations, and overall just being quite a bit more developed than your regular NPCs back in Classic. According to the Classic developer, Undermine was supposed to be like a huge, crazy tanker town, but the issue arose as the team didn't really have that many Goblin assets for a whole city available, and in order to craft a really unique city, they needed a lot more time, so eventually, all this content was cut out, it was scrapped. Then in Cataclysm, we finally got this, and we got the playable Goblins, but Undermine never really happened, but this is like the one city they have been hinting at being available pretty much since Cataclysm, and now in the War Within, it seems almost entirely likely that we will finally get the city, and we actually have quite a bit of evidence for it happening. One of the things I want you to keep in mind is how close the Isle of Kezan actually is to the new expansion zone Khaz'Algar, and this might not seem all that evident, all that clear, as Kezan isn't really seen on the map when you open the map of Azeroth. It is only there once you click the Maelstrom. However, when you do click the Maelstrom, you can see that Kezan is all the way at the bottom, and based on the BlizzCon map where they showed us Khaz'Algar, it is right between Kalimdor and Pandaria. The thing is though, seeing that the entire zone is right below the island, it isn't going to be like a huge continent. It is going to be just one small island with a huge amount of content beneath. The island itself will most likely be around the size of Kezan. However, based on the maps, Kezan is only going to be a bit further north from Khaz'Algar, and I actually think this setup is going to be genius, as Kezan is so obviously connected to Khaz'Algar, because remember, there was a ton of azerite there, which is a part of the World Soul, and Khaz'Algar is like the chamber, the heart chamber of the World Soul itself. There is a reason azerite is so abundant around Kezan. Now, one really important thing to keep in mind is that we know 2 major patches will be coming to all the new expansions of the World Soul saga. They have confirmed this, and guess what? Major patches almost always have a pretty big new zone. Just look at the Dragonfight. In 10.1 we got the Zenala Caverns, in 10.2 we got the Emerald Dream, we got some tiny zones like Forbidden Reach in the smaller patches, but overall, big zones, which is pretty much exactly the size of Kezan, do happen in major patches. And the thing is, what are we really going to do in the War Within? Discover yet another underground layer? In my opinion, the most likely thing is either a Valoran and that undiscovered human kingdom where the Light Guys came from, or Kezan and the Goblins. There just isn't all that much other than this that is close to Khaz'Algar. The only other possibility is potentially going to a portal, traveling to another planet like Alesh if we are doing a huge void thing in this expansion, but I think this is very likely going to happen in Midnight, not the War Within. So let's look at how Kezan and Khaz'Algar are connected, because they're a lot more connected than people think, and let's look at the fact that Blizzard essentially confirmed that Goblins are going to be a major part of the next expansion. So here's the thing, if you remember Cataclysm, you might remember the big city that you played through as a Goblin. This was the Bilgewater port. The thing is, this was not Undermine, this was only a relatively small surface port, but Undermine was actually linked to this place, and it is entirely underground, like a huge, massive, gigantic complex that connects all the Goblins, and we've never actually been able to see it. Then we got the Cataclysm, we know the volcano erupted, Kezan was lost, the Goblins escaped via ships, and that is where we are at the present day. However, this isn't wholly accurate. First of all, Kezan actually wasn't destroyed, only a part of it was. Even the original explanation of Deathwing and Mount Kajaro erupting is subject to debate. One of the theories, and keep in mind, this is not my speculation theory, like this is actually in the game, I think the Blizzard put in where they're obviously hinting at something, and that is that the goblins dug a bit too deep and discovered azerite, which obviously they wouldn't want anyone to know, but it is also pretty dangerous as they have essentially dug into Azeroth herself. Now, this makes so much sense as we're told on BlizzCon that Khaz'Algar is a fissure and it is like the heart chamber of the World Soul, and Kezan is right next door, so it is entirely possible they have dug something related to the World Soul. It might even be Ulda's, that Titan facility, and that might have triggered some type of a Titan mechanism that blew up the island and caused all this stuff. The reason we know Kezan is connected to the World Soul is because of BFA. You might remember we got a massive dungeon back in the day, it was called the Mother Lode. Goblins had discovered a ton of azerite on the Isle of Kezan, and we actually went to this mining operation on the surface of Kezan in BFA. The entire Sword of Sargeras plus the eruption of the volcano, and especially the eruption of the volcano, is what does a volcano do? It brings things from underground to the surface. It is very likely that this brought the azerite from their underground operations, aka Undermine. Now, Mother Lode is important for two big reasons. One is that it showed us that Kezan is actually still a thing and the goblins still live there, and second is that in the PTR, Mother Lode was actually called Undermine. This means that all the way back from Classic to BFA, Blizzard has been trying to add Undermine to the game, but they probably realized that a city this big shouldn't just be a dungeon we visit once and forget, so they just changed it to the mining operations and left it for another day that is going to be happening very soon. Fast forward to like 3-4 days ago, we learned that we are getting 4 new short stories to set up the war within, and this is called World of Warcraft, The Voices Within. All the major characters are involved. We are learning about Anduin and why his peace was shattered. We are getting a story with Thrall and his son. We are getting a story with Alleria and her son, and completely unexpectedly that no one really saw coming, we are getting a story of Gazlowe. Now, check out the War Within artwork. I mean, the first 3 are obviously all over the place as the main characters, but Gazlowe is apparently being added as one of the major players of this expansion, and I think that is for a very obvious reason, as a setup for a later patch. As you may know, I mean, recently we've been getting everyone settling and getting their homes back, from the Worgen to the Night Elves to even the Hints of the Draenei getting a new city, and it is finally time for the goblins to get their own capital back as well. Gazlowe is the main leader at the moment, and as they say, he's going to go to a struggling goblin city in order to inspire its citizens and lead them to more worthy ambitions. Pretty vague, but I think this city could definitely be Undermine. Here's the thing, Undermine itself has been super vague. I mean, there have been multiple accounts that said that Undermine is still active despite the volcano eruption, but there was never really a hard confirmation. It is very likely that the place has been damaged. I mean, almost certainly it has been damaged, and it is possible that this would cause it to be a struggling goblin city, as remember, just prior to the Cataclysm, this was like their main place, a bustling goblin metropolis that eventually got a volcano exploding all over it, which would definitely turn it into a struggling place. With the goblins becoming a bit more normal recently, you know, less exploiting, less destroying the nature, and more fair, it is very likely that Gazlowe may be trying to do some type of a uniting act in order to bring goblins from all the various cartels and factions into one race that would serve Azeroth and protect the World Soul from the giant mess that is going to be coming in the World Soul saga. With the recent underground technology they're developing in the War Within and all these zones, this might be the first ever gigantic underground capital that is actually going to be insane in the present day standards, and actually quite a bit unique as well, as it was said that Undermine is a dizzying network of tunnels, vaults, lava tubes, literally the epitome of goblins' chaotic and unpredictable mindset. They're probably going to explore the reason it is called Undermine, as remember, they weren't begging for gold here. It is entirely possible that they might have reached the World Soul, or even more interestingly, as I said, the Titan facility of Ulda's, which would connect it perfectly to Khaz'Algar and the storyline we are going to get throughout the War Within. So we could get a brand new capital together with a whole patch of Titan related content. Thank you for watching. Check out the top 10 strongest lore classes in the game by clicking on the screen, and check out my video on ancient Greek colonies in Spain by clicking on the screen as well. See you next time.